but they rebelled and vexed his Holy Spirit. Therefore he was turned to be their enemy, and he fought against them. Then he remembered the days of old, Moses and his people saying, where is he that brought them up out of the sea with the shepherd of his flock? Where is he that put his Holy Spirit in him, that led them by the right hand of Moses?
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in Genesis. Just a note on the situation. I think, I've been contacted by my ISP, and they're sending a new unit that I think will fix the problem. So we'll be back to live streaming regularly. Should be by next week. Last time it took them about 9 days for them to ship me the thing that didn't solve the problem. So I'm figuring about 9 days from today. All right, so and we'll see if we can get some more studies in this week. It's hard without the pressure of the live situation for me to, I'm not fitting them in right. So anyways, we'll get back to it. Chapter 37. And I'm going to correct that fan right now before we get started. Oh, but we can leave the lamp thing on. We can leave the sound on, I guess, right? Oh, it's stubborn. I suppose that's where I should scream and make it like I got my finger caught in the fan or something, just to be amusing, right? Just to be a joker. 1 second. All right. And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood around about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, too late. All right, almost got that sneeze. All right, well, whatever. We can't be blamed for trying. So he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come and bow down ourselves to thee, to the earth? One moment. To the earth, okay. And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said unto him, Here am I. And he said unto him, Go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren, and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he went. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man found him. And behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, saying, What seekest thou? And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, They are departed thence. For I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. One moment. Oh, I thought I muted it. Oh, well. The click is quicker than the... slower than the sniff, I guess. Well, there. Sorry about that. Oh, well. It used to be much worse. That's all I could say. All right. I don't know. I think it's allergies, honestly, even though there's snow on the ground. I don't think I have a cold, but I have a little bit of a itchy nose today and yesterday. And the man said, okay, we went to Dothan. They are conspiring to slay him. Verse 19. And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, Let us not kill him. Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him, and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked. And behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead, with their camels bearing spicery, balm, and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it, if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. All right. I gotta blow my nose again. Sorry. Oops. His brethren were content. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen. And they drew and lifted Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. And Reuben returned unto the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. Hold on a second. Sorry. Reuben rents his clothes. And he returned to his brethren and said, The child is not, and I, whither shall I go? And they took Joseph's coat, and killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father, and said, This have we found. Know now whether it be thy son's coat or no. And he knew it, and said, It is my son's coat. An evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. And Jacob rent his clothes, and put sackcloth upon his loins, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, For I will go down to the grave unto my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and captain of the guard. All right, here we are. So, and then it goes into Judah. Actually, we're going to detour a little bit. So here we meet again. Now, I don't know how far back we've gone, but I believe, we already buried Rachel. And so far there are 11 brethren, so that means that there is, Benjamin has been born. In fact, she died in bearing Benjamin, so yeah, she's definitely gone because he said 11 sheaves. And the one says moon and star, what did he mean by mother? I suppose the surviving mother, Leah. That's the only thing that, shall I and thy mother and thy brother. I believe, I don't remember if it gave us a time when Benjamin was born in terms of Joseph's age, but this is all not a very important point, so we're just going to move on from that, okay? All right, and so, again, living in the land of Canaan, the land that God had called Abraham to, the land in which they had been a stranger. They weren't from there, All right, just wanted the sound gone. And, we also live life having taken on Christ as though we are in a strange land. Because by taking on the promises of God, we take on the kingdom, we look for his kingdom. We look for a world in which righteousness dwells. We look for some place that we've got to go. We're heading somewhere. We have this mentality. People say they're going to heaven. I usually don't use that particular formulation because I don't think that's exactly right. It's not about going forever. It's life everlasting in a new heavens and new earth. It's not just about going to heaven. That's kind of a cultural obsession, I think, because we talk about going to heaven. Oh, what? When you die, do you go to heaven? What happens? All these things. We have this desire for immediate fulfillment, and so that also leads us to not properly, envisioning ourselves living in a strange world. Becoming two-part. Friendship with the world is enmity with God. Oh, I got to do that thing in just 1 second. So to become the inheritor of God's promises, Abraham had to leave his country. He had to leave behind the life he had known. We also are called to leave behind our old lives and live as new creatures, as strangers in a land that, even though this is the land we are from, we live as strangers here. And I remember encountering this when I first got serious about my faith. Everyone I knew, I became strange to them, except for the people who were of faith. I became more familiar to them suddenly. They were the ones who embraced me. Those who are not of faith, they didn't necessarily, because they don't necessarily reject you because you have faith, though that could be in some groups, right? But it's more like they wondered at the fact that I didn't run to the same rite of excess anymore. Why aren't you having fun with us anymore? And that is part of the shift we have to undergo, because we're trying to conform our lives to Christ, and Christ's life didn't look like our old life. It just doesn't. In many ways, it's not just about the more visible sins. It goes right down to every idle word, as the Lord declared. It's important. Okay, so he dwelt in that land. And these are the generations of Jacob. And again, that's sort of the big heading on a big portion of what we're about to read. Isaac has passed away. Esau has been, sort of spoken of. We've dealt with Esau. Now, what of Jacob? now that, he's come into his own. That's why this is his. When it says these are the generations of Jacob, it doesn't mean the same thing as it means, like, it doesn't mean, oh, this is his genealogy here. What it means is these are his times. Because generations, just like for us, it does mean births, right? A group of births, or in a time in which people are born. But it also means a time in which people live. And these are Jacob's times, So, when his youngest or younger ones are still young, his youngest is younger than 17, right? What about 5 maybe at this point? Because I thought Joseph, I had in my mind that he was 12, but that could be incorrect. I don't know. But so he was feeding the flock with his brethren, and he was with the sons of Bilhah, his half brothers, and Zilpah, his other half. They had several clusters of half brothers, 3 actually, right? And he brought to his father their evil report. That seems to mean, just contextually and logically, he had some negative things to say about whatever they were up to. He's like, oh, do you know what, Zabulon was up to? Do you know what Issachar was doing? I forget, wait, is those the right ones? Who are the last 2? I thought Zebulon, Issachar, Zebulon, but there were the last 2 that were for Leah, and I forget. Whatever. Was it Asher? Whatever. But again, at one point I had all this memorized, and I decided to let it go because it does become. There we go. After it gives you their sons here, sons of Leah. So I had Issachar and Zebulun were the 2 born after the handmaids. That's what it is. It's Dan. Did you see what Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher were up to? That's what it was. So he's snitching on his brothers. And I'll tell you what, as someone who's had a big family, one of the things people marvel about our family is the total peace, or let's say relative peace. Oftentimes siblings bite and snipe at one another. Mine don't. They don't. I mean, they might have a little joking with each other. There's no serious altercations. Like, I never have people screaming at each other in my house. For one, they know I wouldn't put up with it. From the very beginning, I don't go with the methods of a lot of the patriarchs as far as like favoring some younger son. That creates too much of a dynamic of, I try to favor them all equally because it creates more peace between them. And I discourage things like minor snitching because I try to do my own snitching. I would not want to employ one of the siblings against the other siblings because that would cause conflicts. So avoid that. I do my own finding out. I try not to. I try not to encourage snitching, and I also I encourage them to work out their differences. I was like, you guys have to get along. Because there was no outside schooling, they were, home educated. They had a lot of time to work this out, and they were sort of forced to work it out because, like, I would be working in here and I can't have kids screaming and running around. There are kids in the house right now. There are always kids in my house. You never hear them running and screaming around. Not that we don't do that. We do that, but not while I'm doing this. So you establish very clear rules. And, my main thrust has always been to get them to do what I want them to do. And I was pretty successful at that with, the Iron Fist and the Velvet Glove is kind of the formula I look after. I try to be extremely demanding of big things. And then on small things, I tend to be very whatever. And certainly, one of the things I say, I'm just throwing this in, like, when someone does something, when there's an accident, I try to be understanding because everyone makes mistakes. I've had my share of accidents. especially with older kids. I mean, with younger kids, you got to tell them to be careful, perhaps, or to take care. But I don't want them to care so much after things and fear, an accident so much that it would provoke them to lie about it. I want them to feel comfortable, like, oh, Dad, I was doing this and then I broke the lawnmower, and oh yeah, they never feel good about it, but I never explode over it, because I've broken the lawnmower too. Yeah, consider yourself, because you're also tempted. We are all tempted in similar ways. We may not all have the same susceptibility to similar temptations. I mean, some people might find sexual temptation to be extreme. Others may find it to be minor. Some people might find substance abuse to be a very that's not a very difficult problem to deal with. Other people, it's like the struggle of their life to get free from these things. So anyways, I definitely discourage playing off or favoritism. It will create disharmony, as we see quite clearly here. I'm not trying to rip Jacob. Like I said, it's like, just because we understand more doesn't mean he is somehow guilty. He lives in a world, they don't have as much time to think about relationships and stuff like that. It's like, you don't have... that's why I'm glad Jesus said every idle word, because when you don't have a lot of opportunity for sin, you may not think about things like your words and even your thoughts. Well, what's wrong with my thought? Why would God care about what I'm thinking? Well, it's because thinking is where all the doing starts. Things we think about, we're thinking about them with the potential of, okay, well, is that something we do? Maybe not. Definitely feels like allergies. All right. So, my grandmother taught me that she used to be very anti-snitch, especially when it's like telling on people for minor things. He said this, or little things that don't really matter. Trying to get someone in trouble by telling an adult. I'm not saying that's what the evil report might be genuine and needed. That's another thing, though. While I don't encourage snitching, hold on a second. Let me clarify something. Obviously, one of the things I taught them to do also is to enforce on each other the same rules that I would apply. And I always enforced a very strict top-down sort of seniority system. And one of the ways I always displayed that was in who gets to ride in the front seat of the car. And I have a very simple rule for that. The oldest child in the car gets the front seat. No one fights over it. No one argues about it. At one point, one of the children tried to talk their way in front of the other. They went to the child who had it, because they were close. And they tried to take that privilege from them. But I insisted. I'm like, no, they sit up front. You don't get to just talk them out of their privilege. And I'd give them those privileges. Other privileges when they meet certain milestones, Early on, I look for lying. And I try to make that an important thing. Don't lie, And when they're truthful, I make sure the punishments are slight. Especially when they're young. Because usually, what have they really done? What do kids really do that need some bad punishing? Not much. They're not capable of much. But a little bit of correction. The cool thing about little children is the effect of a minor punishment is way outside of its actual impact. Meaning, by correcting them, by forcing them into right behaviors gently, early on, it's like, to teach a child the right way to go and he won't depart from it. It tends to stick. That's why sometimes when I'll see kids that are like 13, 14 giving their parents hell. I'm like, that kid is way past due it's too late. You can't spank him at 13. I never would. To me, that's like too degrading to someone who's almost an adult. I usually make the cutoff somewhere around 11 or 12. As far as like I always afford, I have plenty of other ways to punish them without spanking. It's a little kid thing, and it should be taken in that measure too. You don't need to crack them hard or anything. It's just a slap on the rear end and the younger the better. The better you start early with, again, a gentle correction, but they feel it. Know that, like I said in the scriptures, he won't die. They won't die. They won't die. And also, is you keep it to a minimum. It's like, I don't think any of them had to be spanked more than a dozen times their entire life. I doubt anyone got past a dozen spankings, to tell you the truth. All right, hold on. I gotta blow my nose one more time. All right, now I'm just gonna fix that little thing. All right, it's resisting me. There we go. The fan is fixed. All right, so yeah, that's not advisable, but it's part of the story, and that's one of the things in Scripture. There's a little danger of taking everything in the Scripture, like assuming it's an example because it's done by a forefather. No, like, yeah, I should buy a special gift for my youngest that I like, and like all the other ones, just kind of ignore them a bit. I mean, it's like Jacob didn't plan to get in this marriage, but once he got into this situation, whatever situation you find yourself in, you've got to do your best in that situation. I'm not saying he didn't, but looking at this example, don't imitate it. It's not a good idea. Do not take... It even got into the law. You're not supposed to treat the children of the hated wife differently than the ones of the beloved wife. Because though this happened, when the thing they did for evil, the Lord turned to good. It doesn't mean they should have done it. And it's an interesting thing too, because what men often intend for evil does work out for good, for the elect, anyways. Maybe not for the ones doing the evil. That's one of the things that's throughout the Scripture you observe it here, and of course the Apostle Paul famously said in Romans, all things work together for good for those that love God, those that are called according to His purpose. Hold on. I don't know. It seems to be getting worse. So, he loved Joseph more than all his children. He was the son of his old age. He made him a coat of many colors. Probably not a good idea. But sometimes people can't help themselves. They feel that love and favoritism. I mean, I get it. You can have what are the chances you're going to really, really like your kids? It's possible you might not like them much at all. You're somewhat responsible for that, but also there are things about people. People just have personality differences, right? But even so, I think it's important to love them all the same. Whether you like one child more than the other, in the sense that I'm using the word like as a replacement for love, because I want to talk like is in terms of I'm fond of this person. I like this person. There's someone who pleases me for whatever reason. Could be just he was handsome and he particularly liked this little one, whatever. He was his youngest one because it was the child who was oldest, so he liked him better. Maybe he turned out better because he was a better father by then. I don't know. I would say that to my kids, is that, they'll say, you were rougher when we were young. I'm like, yeah, I was younger too. I was also new at it. So I readily admit, you guys got more spankings because I quite honestly didn't really know what I was doing as much. So I let you get out of the way more. And you needed more correction. Also, I wasn't around as much with some of the younger ones. And I worked a lot more outside the house. So, I never had that. I always felt kind of equal. What do I call it? Enmity. Animus feelings. Good feelings towards all my kids. as far as I liked them enough. I didn't dislike any of them. But then, to me, when we talk about parental love, it's about the first order is the same kind of love that God gives us, which is the benevolence, doing what's good for us, doing what's good for our children. That's my first priority, though, to love them, to do what's good for them, to raise them up so they can live out the greatest potential they have, or at least, find out what that is and where they want to direct it. And in doing that, the way we love, like I always talk about love, we can't just love to make ourselves feel good or to make other people feel good. The point is to genuinely help them. Like, I want to give my kids genuine advantages in life. I try to get them, when we do wrestling, my kids aren't the most talented. My son finished 7th in state, but because he worked hard, and his brothers worked him hard in the weight room, working, getting stronger to be able to compete with guys who have maybe more natural physical strength, more natural wrestling ability. I try to give them other advantages, coaching them personally, closely, try to give them every bit they can. Same thing academically. You can help your kids achieve better. Not by, I remember some parents would actually cheat and write their kids' composition. Don't do that. You're not helping them. Not really. I mean, I guess in some way. Like, we'll cheat our way through it, and then you'll get a good grade, and you'll get a good job because you had good grades. Then you'll be incompetent in your job. Like, we got enough of that? I think so. We got plenty of that. So we have to take responsibility for the consequences of our love. The way we love is important. We have to love with a view of improving them and granting to them, ushering them through childhood and granting them adulthood. But getting them there, having shaped them into an adult, you're giving them a future self that they can rely on, hopefully, that they can use to improve themselves and to serve the Lord. One second. I think about in life, there aren't any projects you get more important than raising up new humans. Everyone wants to, start a ministry, right? Not everyone, but I'll heap to myself a bunch of disciples. I'll make myself a big church. I'll get all these people listening to me. It's like, first, if you can't get your kids to listen to you, why the heck should you have anyone listening to you? And if you haven't proven that you can do that, then why the hell are we listening to you as a pastor? I have a real problem with men in leadership of ministry with babies. Sorry. I mean, not that you could have babies, but you have no older children. And I guess such is the situation. I mean, who do we don't, if we wait around for perfect leaders, we may get no one. I get that. It's like something's just got to do with what you have. But I think also a lot of people, I don't know. It's like sometimes I'll see kids, they come to adulthood and they kind of straighten out. But while they were teenagers, they were extremely unruly with their parents and difficult and all this stuff. I don't know. Ushering them through the difficult time is part of the important challenge. And you got to, like I said, I take that as a serious thing that I take part in. The molding of young adults. And mostly, what kind of people are they going to be? What kind of character do they have? Are they going to be positive contributors to this world, or yet again more debauchery for the furnace? God forbid. So here it goes though. When his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him. Yeah, that's what'll happen. You favor one child over the others, they're going to hate that child. Is that what you want for them? You know, when you spoil one child, you create envy. And so it's not a good idea. And sometimes people can't help themselves. You know, and so he makes him a coat of many colors, this fancy coat. You know, the kid going around with his many-colored coat. And it's just not going, you know, they could not speak peaceably to him. I've seen some of that, like where I'll notice sometimes a child has trouble talking to another child in a kindly way because there's some sort of underlying animosity growing there or has grown. You know, so like no matter what he says, it's like they're snapping back at him. They can't just speak peaceably to him. That's how much they hate him. They just literally can't talk nice with Joseph. And he's 17. He's not like a child. He's a young man. And so this is a situation. In the midst of this, Joseph has this dream. This dream is kind of fateful. It's not only is it the truth, it also sparks what happens. At least that's how it feels, right? These dreams really upset them even more. And it's an interesting thing. Like I said, for my children are my children, right? I know they're all mine. They belong. They're my natural children. I'm the husband of one wife. I've had them all but the same woman. And so, I don't have a favorite type thing. But, what was I saying? Oh. I was going with that. Hold on. It's something I've observed. That'll come back to me. Yeah, no, I know what I was going to say. Because I was going to relate it to something. I had an idea in my head. I want to state it up front so I don't bury it with all the preliminaries. But, like, God chooses favorites. That's one of the things we got to deal with. I don't recommend it among your children. And here's the thing. Among his children, God doesn't do that either. But those he chooses for his children, it is like this. He does good things for us. He favors us. Not above our brethren, but amongst our brethren, because the children of God are all brethren, and we are favored of God. You know what I mean? But among our human brethren, among the humans with whom we have somewhat in common, not all are the children of God, as the parable of the tares makes clear. There are some who are the children of the wicked one, and they grow up right with us. I'm not saying this to condemn the patriarchs, but it is like an image of that somewhat. Because, as they, the brethren take Joseph and throw him in this pit and sell him into slavery, it's kind of it's sort of metaphorical for the experience that I want to say, like, not that all people go through, but like, well, Christ, his betrayal, his sacrifice, and then that resurrection, reconciling the world to God. He was betrayed and done evil to him, but he was wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities. Joseph also is going to suffer, but ultimately it is to save his brethren, the very ones that cast him out, the very ones that sold him into slavery, to save them and all theirs. Only Benjamin being accepted. I think they were all part of this. So then he has a dream and he tells them, and they hate him all the more because of it. And then he said to them, "Here are the dream which I have dreamed. We were binding sheaves in the field, and my sheaf arose and stood upright, and your sheaf stood around, made obeisance." Sorry. We're going to have to end this a little early, too. Okay, we were binding sheaves. Lo, my sheaf arose. Stood upright. Your sheaf stood around and bowed to it. The brethren immediately understood the meaning. I mean, it wasn't like this big, wow, what's it all mean? 11 sheaves, huh? They got it. And, we know from hindsight that, well, his dream's true. He's going to go down to Egypt. He's going to become the most powerful man in Egypt after Pharaoh. And they will literally bow down before him, not knowing who he is, but this was coming. And it's also interesting that the dream not only predicts, but sort of provokes. The prophecy itself coming is the beginning of it. And it's interesting because it's like, it's a good example of how God does not, men are tempted, but God doesn't do the tempting, not with evil. He tests us with righteous truths. You know what I mean? But they could not accept that truth. The idea that he might rule over them. Here's the thing. I don't have to favor my sons or my daughter for them to be favored over each other. All right. Meaning they all have differing gifts. Some may, when you have brethren, you have to face up to the fact they may outstrip me in one way or another. Maybe one's better at one thing, one's better at the other. Maybe one's really good at everything and all the rest are not. So there can be envy rise up in any situation. But, because of blessing. But, God blesses for a purpose. And we shouldn't be envious of other people's gifts. We could ask God to give us gifts, beyond what we have. As long as it's in his name, as long as it's for the benefit of his kingdom, not for your own making yourself great. And that's not what the gifts are for. The gifts are not there to make you great or to allow us to do amazing things and build a ministry, miracle working, right? Oh, I want to work miracles so I can build a giant ministry and make lots of money. Is that really in the Lord's interest? Is that what it means to act in his name? Or is that rather more equivalent to taking the Lord's name in vain? Oh, yes, it is. Shalt thou indeed reign? Shalt thou indeed have dominion? I'm not going to look those up. I'm assuming they're similar to what's being translated there. It just means different ways of saying the same thing. You're going to be ruler over us. You're going to have control over us. They hated him yet more for his dreams and for his words. Everything he said, because he's a little smarty. He's a very intelligent young man. I remember when I was young, whenever I would mouth off and if I knew something more or had some insight more over my older brother, I remember him not liking it very much, and I get it. I see when people see smart-mouthed little kids who know too much, who yak, and, children should be taught to be respectful of older people, even if they do know more, and you can still express your knowledge and your competence without rubbing in people's faces. That's a lesson that the people who have gifts should learn. If you don't want to be hated for your gifts, use them gently. Use them for good. Use them to help people and to be helpful. Sometimes just, kids are too unself-conscious. And they just, young people. He's only 17, so he hasn't really, men, their brains aren't said to mature really till they're about 24, so he's still quite young. And, we can grieve others with our words. Constantly being right does not make people like you. Constantly nipping and constantly, I'm not saying that's what Joseph is doing. I'm just saying the reason, that you can understand why his brethren would feel resentful and so on and so forth. And there are ways you could ameliorate that. There are ways you could, reduce the effect of the abundance of the gifts. Paul the apostle, I want to call him humble, because in his mind he has been humbled. But on the other hand, it's like there's nothing more, arrogant than the truth, as far as in the eye, especially in the eyes of someone who doesn't agree. And when you think you know the truth, and it's not what someone else believes the truth is, a lot of times what I find is when I was arguing with people, they would call me arrogant. So arrogant, because I think I'm right. I get it. I guess I see why that would be considered a somewhat arrogant posture. It makes some sense, And so also, he's telling the truth. It's the arrogance of this truth. He has these dreams, and he tells his father, and his father rebukes him. What is this dream you have? What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we indeed come and down, bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? As the proverb says, I believe it's in Proverbs, or maybe it's Ecclesiastes. It says, "Out of the multitude of business cometh forth a dream." And most dreams are like that. It's some sort of unpacking or rehashing in your mind of a lot of things that have happened or that you're anticipating. It's repressed fears and dreams and thoughts. That is a lot of the substance of the dream that we have. It comes from our own head. Now, the Lord can give dreams. It's where he communicates. Like if I had a waking dream of the Lord coming and talking, I would assume that was genuine, because I just don't have dreams like that. It's a weird thing for me. Because, all my life I've been thinking about God. I haven't had a lot of dreams about God. Almost zero. Nearly zero. Really, I only remember, I could say one or maybe two. And the second one was the old one, and that one I'm not even sure would qualify. It's too much of a childish dream. But yes, I even know people who have told, from having a dream of God that changed their life. And I certainly would like to have dreams about God, and I think about God a lot, but I don't dream. It's interesting to me. So if I did, I think I would take it quite seriously. I would probably be like, well, God's communicating with me in a dream. But it's so rare so as to be, notable. Like, why don't I dream about that? Why don't I have routine dreams of God talking to me? It seems like the sort of thing I should dream about, since it's something I routinely do. All right, 1 second here. Last blow, I think. So he told his father and his brethren, he rebukes him. The brethren, so his brethren envied him. His father observed it. And let's see what that means. Oh, I gotta do it on my phone. I was gonna say, from the context, it obviously means something like he kept the saying, as it says. But his mother kept the saying in her heart because of what the Lord would do, and all that. And perhaps that's what happened here. Verse 11. Observed. His father observed the saying. I'm looking up on Bible Hub, which I normally do on screen, but we're still working from Wi-Fi. Not Wi-Fi, we're working from cell phone data. shamar, to keep watch or preserve. You know, he kept the saying. He preserved it. He remembered. He made note of it, sort of thing. He rebuked him, but he also was, you know, Jacob is a thoughtful man. This is kind of a, indeed shall it be so. I mean, he favors the child. You know, and in some ways he might be wondering, you know, did I cause this? You know, because here's the thing. I'm not saying it's true of Joseph, but giving too much attention to a child, and the wrong kind of attention, too much affirmation, is a way to foster narcissism. They begin to think that they're the center of the world. You got to teach them no. You got to sometimes be a bit strict. I say strict, not rough. You don't need to be rough with kids. Just be strict, which means you just have rules, and those rules don't change. Don't have a lot of them either. A lot of stupid ones, because it's like, why? It's like, no, we don't. We can jump on the couches, but we don't try to physically tear them to pieces. All right. And then his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. The brother went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel says to Joseph, don't they feed your flock? You know, aren't they feeding the flock? I'm going to send you. And he said, here I am. I'm ready to go. Go and see whether it's well with them. You know, just check them out, see what's going on. You know, probably the normal thing he has Joseph do. Just kind of go, you know, run an errand for me and come back because he's fond of him. He keeps him around him. He's got, now that his sons are all out working, you know, he's got more time to stick around with the little ones. Maybe with them he hadn't spent time because he was himself busy working. That's very true of his service with Laban and stuff. He had all these kids real fast. I mean, basically on top of each other, you know, and he wouldn't have much time for him. And now this one is kind of becoming his little personal assistant, causing further envy. So he he met a certain man. A certain man found him, just some guy, but probably someone familiar to them. That's why it's a certain man who was probably known to them, because he knew where they went. I heard them say it, he says. Let us go to Dothan. So he found them there in Dothan, and they see him coming. And they conspire against him to slay him, so they throw him in the pit. But first, actually I should say, you know, I have let's just start with verse 18 next time. I have to get going because I got to go pick up my daughter. And this study's going to be a little shy of an hour. We'll pick it up at 18 next time. Until then, thanks for joining me. I look forward to being back to study God's Word in the book of Genesis. Until then.
But they rebelled and vexed his Holy Spirit. Therefore he was turned to be their enemy. And he fought against them. Then he remembered the days of old, Moses and his people say, where is he that brought them up out of the sea with the shepherd of his flock? Where is he that put his Holy Spirit in him?